Happy Tuesday, friends! Here we are with Gentle Reads, Blessings in Disguise by Nancy Neal, Chapter 7. Trying to forget what had happened back at the house, Cheryl got in her car and headed toward the Miller's farm. She forced herself to take a deep breath. Not only was she still tense after her surprise delivery, but she couldn't shake the nervous feeling that came with not being sure what to expect at an Amish meal. Following the signpost on the edge of town, she drove a couple of miles before she saw the sign for Miller's Petting Zoo. Since she was running a little early, she pulled into the parking lot. Then she got out of the car to look around. She saw all kinds of animals, pygmy goats and lambs and calves and chickens and ducks and even miniature horses. There were more areas beyond the first big barn and the fenced pens that were visible. Large wagons with horses sat out front, waiting to take visitors on a tour of the farm and its animals. Cheryl decided that when she could, she'd come back and take the entire tour. She'd just started back to her car when she heard someone call out her name. She turned and saw Eli the Miller's youngest son, headed her way. "Did you come to see our petting zoo?" he asked with a smile as he approached. She returned his smile and nodded. "I'm on my way to your house for dinner and was curious about the maze and the petting zoo." Eli's dark hair framed a friendly face. He was a handsome young man who probably had turned more than one Amish girl's head. "Let me give you a quick tour," he said. "You will still get to my house in plenty of time." Cheryl glanced at her watch. She had plenty of time, so she agreed. "I love animals," she said as she followed Eli to the entrance. "Then you will like our zoo," Eli said. "We treat our animals with respect." "I heard that at one time the Amish didn't really have pets. Animals were seen only as livestock." Eli paused in front of a pen with several pygmy goats. "That may be true," he said softly as he stretched his hand out toward a cute black and white goat that came up to him. "I believe Dad was raised that way, but man has a soft heart for all of God's creatures. Her gentle ways have worn him down, I think. When it turns really cold, he comes down here to make sure all the animals are warm and comfortable." He pointed to a large barn at the back of the zoo. "He has insulated the barn for their comfort," he laughed. "In the winter, when he does not put enough wood on the fire, Ma'am teases him. She tells him he cares more for the animals than he does for his family." Cheryl chuckled. The Millers were such a close-knit family. She couldn't help but be a little jealous. She loved her parents and her brother, but they certainly didn't have the kind of bond the Millers did. "Here," Eli said. "This is Domino. He loves to be petted." Cheryl leaned down and stroked the tiny goat's head. "He really is precious. I'm afraid I'd take him home if he were mine." Eli nodded. "Elizabeth has brought him into the house more than once. Dad scolds for it. But he does not make her take him back right away. More than once I have found him sitting in the living room with Domino on his lap." Domino rubbed his head against Cheryl's hand. Two other goats came up and began to push at each other, trying to get Eli's and Cheryl's attention. "I think they're jealous," Cheryl said, laughing. "Yes, I believe they are." Eli chided them for their antics, which made them try harder for attention. After several more head rubs, Cheryl and Eli toured the rest of the zoo. Cheryl fell in love with the miniature horses and the soft lambs. Eli gave her some grain to feed the lambs. She stroked their velvety faces with one hand as they gently nuzzled her hand as they ate. When they circled back to the parking lot, Cheryl pointed toward the corn maze. She could tell just by looking that it was clearly better organized and maintained than the Gleasons. "I went through the maze in town," she said. "I wasn't impressed." Eli frowned. "Ma'am told us you were not given a map. Although some visitors like to find their way without it, we make sure everyone takes it with them, just in case they have a problem. I do not want to say anything against the Gleasons, but—" He hesitated a moment. Cheryl recalled Esther's reluctance to say anything negative about the Gleasons as well. Eli obviously felt the same way. "I understand," Cheryl said quickly, trying to save him from saying something that might bother his conscience. Eli nodded. I would be happy to let you in, but you might be late for dinner. Cheryl shook her head. I think I'll stay out of mazes for a while, maybe another time. Eli smiled. Any time. You let me know when you're ready. Thank you, and thank you so much for showing me around. I loved it. She pulled her car keys out of her coat pocket. I guess I'll see you at the house. He nodded. As soon as I close everything down, I'll be home. He paused for a moment and looked down at the ground. Cheryl waited because she sensed he had something else to say on his mind. I am glad you have come to Sugar Creek. Ma'am, Mrs. Mitzi, but I see she has found a friend in you. Friends are precious gifts. Cheryl was touched by his comment and felt a wave of emotion wash over her. She felt blessed by her friendship with the Millers. If someone had told her a year ago that she would become close friends with an Amish family, she would have thought they'd lost their minds. Thank you, Eli. I feel the same way. She walked back to the car, waved goodbye, and pulled back out onto the road. As she drove toward the Miller's farmhouse, she found herself traveling alongside a lovely creek. To turn into the yard, she had to cross a charming old covered bridge that stretched over the bubbling water.